What's up guys, it's Marcus at Static Cling, here to demonstrate some of the new features and improvements coming in version 1.1 of Tome and Index. Do note that these are free updates and only require Reason 7.1 or higher. Let's get started. First off, a small workflow improvement. New instances of Tome now start at C2 instead of C-2. Something that's less obvious as a result of this is that zoom and position for string instruments and piano are now decoupled, so those can be totally independent. Next up, I've added Midi Indicators to both Index and Tome. These should work exactly how you'd expect. If you are playing Midi into them, it'll light up. There's Index, and here's Tome, of course. In addition, with Tome, if you are using the CV input jacks that it has, here I'm providing some CV from Index actually, you'll see that the indicator also lights up. So hopefully that'll help diagnose any connection or MIDI issues. Now another essential feature is the ability to distinguish between sharps and flats in a given key or scale. You'll note that in the drop downs I've added all the inharmonic equivalents just so you can kind of see those, they're present. Previously I defaulted to sharp, and that's what you're seeing here, but if you flip around to the back and go to the accidental states section, you can flip these switches and you will see flat versions of those notes instead of sharp. I do want to point out that these are inharmonic, which means they are technically the same pitch. This will not change the functionality of the device, and it's really just something you're going to have to set depending on whether the key you're playing in has sharps or flats. And now an improvement for Index's reverse MIDI lookup feature. I now show the inversion number of the chord you're playing. So first off, we'll play an uninverted chord. This is just regular C major, nothing changed here. But now we'll play the first inversion, E over C major, which I now call out as the first inversion. And then finally the second inversion, which is G over C major. And this also works for any higher order chords as well. That kind of wraps up the smaller features and improvements. Now we're going to take a look at the substantial workflow improvement that came to Index's direct chord preview. This basically makes it act a lot more like a player in that previewed chords are now triggered by MIDI. This opens up actually a lot of cool possibilities, like the ability to control velocity through your keyboard, control the length of the chord, control the octave of these chords. So here I am just doing the typical hookup. If you don't know about that, you can watch some of the previous videos. Next up, we got to make sure we're not in chromatic or none. So major will work for this. And lastly, you want to make sure you're not in reverse mode, because if you are, it's just going to act like you're used to. So to use this mode, you need to click any of the direct chords. And now, just use your white keys on your keyboard. A quick explanation, the white keys on your keyboard starting at C will always trigger the same number chord in that table. So C will always trigger that first top chord, D will always trigger the second chord. In this case, it corresponds because we're in the key of C major, but I'll show you in a later example where that's not the case and C still triggers the first chord, etc., etc. Now, like I mentioned, this also allows us to control velocity and octave from these keys. So if you play quietly or loudly, you'll get those differences. And if you play different octaves, we can play different octaves of these chords, which was also previously impossible. Now, of course, if you add extensions to any of these chords, they're going to get triggered with the proper extended notes just the same. Now I want to point out something important. If you've been in a given direct chord mode and decide to change your key or scale, you're going to be shown this red recalculate button. It won't let you continue to play chords until you press that, and that's because of some behind the scenes SDK limitations I'm having to work around. So again, you see here we changed to E, and I want to point out you can click anywhere in the table and it's going to recalculate and you'll be good to go. And just a reminder that these chords are all getting triggered by white keys. So C triggered E major 7, D triggered F sharp minor 7, etc. The last thing to note is that you can only trigger one of these chords at a time. If you press C and then press D while C is still held down, the second chord simply will not be triggered. Perhaps the best side effect of this change is that it's now very easy to record progressions entirely through Index. Once you've recorded a progression you like, you can tweak it further from here through the table or by completely changing the key and scale. Thanks for watching. I hope you find these new features and improvements useful. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to the email in the bottom right. Thanks.